Hello. Let me ask you a question. Have you ever been for an interview or applied for a job and one of the requirements was good communication skills? And I bet you anything you put down, yes, absolutely, I've got amazing communication skills. Like this, we all believe about ourselves. Yeah, I'm an excellent communicator. Yet, how is it that so many problems in business and in life actually are a result of poor communication skills? I think it's an area that we often could be a bit delusional about, right? So that's what our topic for today. We're going to dive into that. Welcome to this week's Marketing, Branding and Getting the Sale show. I'm joined by my co-hosts here, Jess and Stephen. And just in case you don't know us, yes, let's just do some quick intros and then we dive into our topic for today. Over to you, Jess.
Good morning, everyone. With my clients, I help them stop gambling with a marketing budget. So if you're in a position where you feel like you're throwing money at SEO, ads, websites, and you don't quite know why or what's working, then that's a perfect time to have a chat. I have a 6-step loyalty process that can make sure you get more profit through your marketing or through your brand. So that's me, Jess.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jess. Stephen.
Good morning, everybody. This is Stephen Lerman from Chameleon BDS Limited. So the other side of communication, if you don't like making outbound calls, you don't have the facility to do so, or you're just afraid of picking up the phone, then you can give me a call and I can help companies get in front of more clients by making those appointments and doing all the prospecting and cold calling for them.
Fantastic. Thank you, Stephen. If you haven't met me yet, my name is Una Doyle. I'm a business strategist and coach, and I can help any business to unlock 50K or usually more in only 50 minutes. If you want to know how, DM me. I can send you a video. We can have a quick chat and I'll show you how I can actually do that. Got some amazing proprietary software that helps with this, in addition to my now 19 years of experience being a coach. I can't believe it's so long, right? So anyway, our topic for today is all about communication techniques. So before we kind of dive into that, like, what's your thoughts on how I opened up today, Jess?
Yeah, it's a really good point. And when we talk about communication, or when I talk about communication, I think listening is a big part of it, and that's a big kind of hurdle, or I won't say hurdle maybe, but maybe a realization and an epiphany that I had when I was learning communication techniques and how to communicate better and things like that. And a lot of it was listening. And yeah, when someone says, I'm a good listener, and we can think, oh, we're great listeners. But how often are we listening to someone when we're supposed to listen to someone, we're really thinking about what we're going to say next? And then as soon as there's a gap in the sentence, we dive in with what we're going to say. Or the amount of times I hear someone opening up about something and then that other person not knowing what to say. So talking about themselves or their own situation, or, well, I did this and I did that. And kind of reflecting the conversation. So to me, when we talk about communication, listening is something that's really significant.
Absolutely, and certainly in, I think, both my marketing and in my training as a coach, the phrase active listening is something that that we were definitely taught to focus on. What about you, Stephen? What's your thoughts about communication?
Well, first of all, the way you opened up this morning was brilliant because, we're so used to being done in a certain way. We just go into autopilot. So we expect the introductions first and then you launch into, the topic. But this way you did it, this week you did it completely differently. And funnily enough, I was actually, not that I wasn't switched on norm every week, but I was really, I'm
Oh,
setting
it's all
myself up
coming
that,
out now.
yeah. Yeah, I was like ready, and the way you started was great. It was, because of this topic is all about communication. I was ready. I was primed, and as far as you know, communication, it's key. I was always taught one thing: you've got two ears and one mouth. You should use them in that order. And so many times, people they 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 don't listen to hear; they listen to reply, which
It's
is
just
massive.
very
Now,
true.
in business, I'm all about listening, but in my personal life, my girlfriend is always telling me, You're interrupting, not letting me finish speaking." So I'm always, like you said, Jess, about always, waiting for that gap to pounce, as it were, pounce. That's what I do because I think, oh, she's finished, but it's not. It's that pregnant pause, if you will. So communication is so important. This is a great topic. I'm so excited for this week.
There's so many things that I want to share today. One of the things I want to do is, you know, for you watching and listening right now, I want you to think about this from at least two different perspectives. So one is from a marketing perspective, and the other is from the perspective of you as a leader. So for in terms of team members or freelancers that you might use, or even if you don't have a team right now, the people who you will have on your team in the future. And of course, you know, like from a marketing point of view, you know, we're thinking about your clients, your prospects, and how you communicate with those. So communication is just, it's just such a massive subject. I mean, we could probably talk about this all week, but we're going to try and keep it a bit shorter than that today. We all have places to go and things to do, right? So here's one of the first things I want to talk about, which is we have to put ourselves in the receiver's shoes before we decide what we're going to say and how we're going to say it. I think that's so important. Um, and when we do that, it's almost like if you think about communication going into like a black box. And then, you know, so you got you and you got the receiver, but like in that black box there's all these different things going on. So we have got a lot of noise. Most people have got a huge amount of noise externally. We're bombarded by marketing messages all the time. We've got social media, we've got, you know, messages coming in, notifications going off. Unless you're a bit more organized, please switch off all your notifications, right? But that's what happens to most people. They're like, you know, pinging and ringing and images, video, text, all this noise going on that is competing for our attention. And this is the thing in in getting in getting someone's attention, like that's really what we want, is their attention. Without their attention, the chance of a message actually being properly received is very slight. But there's not just all this external noise. Quite often there's internal noise too. So there's the, oh, you know, did I turn the cooker off? What does this person think about me? Am I good enough? Like, so there's all the kind of self-talk that people tend to have, as well as the just distractions or worries or, you know, whatever is going on for them. And then we need to take into account, well, what's the worldview of the person who we're communicating with or people we're communicating with? Like, what's their worldview? How is that going to affect the message that I'm looking to communicate? How is that going to affect how that message will be interpreted? How often, I mean, just think about it. How often have you said something totally innocent and then the other person took offense, took it personally, and you're like, I didn't mean that at all. Like, what? So when that happens, it's because of what's going on for the receiver of that communication. So it's no wonder really that we can think we're doing an amazing job of communicating, but our message isn't landing, or it's being misinterpreted, or it isn't even getting through the noise. So there's a lot going on, isn't there? What do you think?
I agree. I think a lot of it as well is it's about adapting the message to the audience. You know, it's using the right terminology, because, you know, if you're talking to somebody on the production line, let's just say, the language they use is going to be far different from somebody in the boardroom. So you could be a lot less technical for somebody on that ground floor level versus somebody, you know, at sea level. And I don't mean, you know, sea level, not sea
C-suite.
level, C-suite. There we go, C-suite. Thank you. But also, I get what you're saying about the person having a lot of things going on internally, you know, and that they're trying to rationalize, well, what do they mean by that, you know? And I've been guilty of it so many times, of saying something what I believe is quite innocent, um, and it being completely misinterpreted, and I had to then go back and justify what I've said. So I didn't mean it like that. I meant it like this, because in my head, what I've said sounds quite normal, but it's the other person hasn't quite understood what I've said, you know, and I then have to go back and explain it, and then you have to go and explain it to the nth degree. So I think it's all about adapting the message that you've got for the audience that it's intended and using the right terminology.
Absolutely. Good morning, Chris. Welcome and thank you. Yeah, that's the thing. It's like, and when there is that miscommunication going on, I think it really is helpful for us to look at ourselves as well, because maybe we didn't use the right words, or maybe we were ambiguous, or maybe our worldview colored what we were saying in such a way that to us it seems really obvious, but to somebody else it might not. And actually, this is especially true for creators because it's. I remember once hearing their communication described as, so there was somebody who is more extroverted. So on my ignition profiles, they would be a captain profile. Well, there'd be a captain profile, and this person would be an astronaut profile. So very, very creative, really prolific with their ideas, very big picture thinking. And so this captain profile who worked with this astronaut said, well, they're so inspiring and so visionary. It's brilliant. But then when it comes to getting things done, it's like they hand you this beautifully wrapped box. And so you're there, it's got you undo the ribbon, and then you take off the wrapping paper, and you're so excited, and you open up the box, and guess what's inside? Nothing. Because it's too big picture, and they haven't gone into enough detail. And so from a leadership point of view, this can happen a lot with, bosses, managers, business owners, where they're delegating and then they get frustrated with the other person for not doing something or not doing it properly, when actually they didn't really give a full enough brief. So, hands up, put an emoji in the comments if you've ever experienced that. I know I certainly did when I was in the workplace. So we need to be really careful that we don't visualize in our heads the perfect picture blueprint, but then what we give to the other person is this beautifully wrapped empty box that actually hasn't got the details in it. And actually, Chris is making a great point here. Let's not even start on the topic of the vast English language, double meanings, and so many words. I often have to explain jokes. So this is the thing, isn't it? Like there often are so many interpretations of a word that can have a lot of different connotations and can mean things. Like I remember once, as part of my own mindset journey, and my mindset coach saying to me, well, support to men often, not always, but often means financial support. So you might say support, but they often think financial support. So, isn't that interesting? Like I would never have known that. I would never have occurred to me. So I think it's really interesting how different things mean different things to different people. Yes, there's the language thing. Also, we do have that male-female dynamic going on as well. And just as I said about people's worldviews. So I think what's really important, and so we need to, like, one of my favorite sayings is by Stephen Covey: seek to understand before being understood. And I think it's just such a powerful saying. It just sums up a lot of what we've talked about. And what that means is whoever you are communicating with, whether they're your team members, prospects, clients, whoever else, you need to understand them. And I definitely see time and time again in, the conversations I have, in the coaching I do, that people don't put enough time and effort into understanding the audience and what motivates them, what their hot buttons are, really, really getting clear on those things. So it's really important to do that. Seek to understand before being understood. Okay, so Chris just saying messaging has to have substance and relevance, meeting a need and being concise. Do you know what? That relevance bit there is so important. So look, give some context. I actually spent a number of years as part of kind of on my kind of actually before I coach and then also after I coached, I've worked on various big change programs. So I worked for Network Rail. I've also worked for some local authorities, working on change programs where you've got vast numbers of people from hundreds to multiple thousands, where I was responsible for the employee communications and engagement, getting them engaged in that change, getting them on board. And uh, when people think something isn't relevant, they're just totally switch off. They're just like, oh, this doesn't apply to me. And one of the things that often happens, like in a change program, is people think, oh, this doesn't apply to me. So you've really got to make sure that whatever you're looking to do, and this is the thing, communication is always about change. You're wanting somebody to change their behavior or change their thinking or change their worldview, change their actions, whatever it is. There's going to be something there that you're looking to effect. So we need to make sure that it is relevant. And actually, if going back to what Stephen said about how I opened up today, I wanted to make sure that this was relevant and people would kind of go, oh, is that me? Do I think I'm a good communicator, but maybe I don't know as much as I think, or maybe I know things but don't do them. Like, we can all be guilty of that. So we want to make sure that we're relevant with that. Okay, so what's one way then that, if we were to put this into steps, so you've got to, seek to understand, really get to understand the receiver of the communication. And then you've got to get clear on what exactly is it that you are looking to communicate. And why should they care? So in my PR days, we always used to we always had to answer the question, what's in it for me? We've always got to be thinking, well, why should they care about this? What's in it for them? And if you can't answer that, then there's probably no point you communicating, because they're going to perceive it as irrelevant and it's just not going to get through the noise. They're not going to pay any attention to it. So you've got to get clear on your messages, make sure it's relevant, make sure it's clear what's in it for them, why they ought to listen, and perhaps act on what you're saying. But then a great thing to do, which is probably easier in some respects to do in a one-to-one communication or in a small group, but where possible, look to check the understanding from the other person. Now, a great place to practice this is in your relationships, or if you're delegating to a team member. And literally, if you get them to repeat back what they think you said, it can sometimes take 4 or 5 times for them to be able to do that accurately. Now, obviously, in romantic relationships, there quite often can be stuff going on, like particularly if this is happening kind of, post argument or something, then you've got to allow for that. But even with team members, like, to get them to repeat back, okay, so let me just check, what is it that you're going to be doing, and then you can make corrections. Actually, it's not quite that. Is this nuance here, or actually you completely missed out this bit, which is really important. So getting them to understand, getting them to check that understanding and make sure they've really got it is the only way really to check that the communication has been, 1, received, and 2, understood. So that's a great thing to do. I'm going to pause there. I've got a few more points I want to make, but I'm just going to pause there. Stephen, Jess, any questions? You want to throw something in there as well?
No, it's what you've said. You've talked about making sure that the recipient understands. It's like there's 3 things involved. So number 1, you've got active listening. So making sure that the recipient has fully understood. Number 2, the person giving the message ask for feedback to make sure that they've understood, which kind of engages the active listening as well. And then also just probing, asking questions to make sure that they've understood, so that there's no misunderstandings. So there's 3 things that you've just encompassed in that one topic or subject, if you will, which is so they're all intertwined.
Yeah.
Really, but I think active listening is a huge one because, like you said, if people aren't engaged, they switch off and they miss out the relevant points, which will bring back to the probing for questions to make sure that they've understood or asking for feedback. So they're all very, very closely interlinked, but super important, I think.
Definitely. Jess.
And I think whether you're talking one to one in a personal relationship, talking one to one in a business relationship, talking to a group when you're speaking, talking to a group in in departments, or whether you've got a marketing message out there where you're not literally stood there saying the message to be able to justify it and to be able to make sure it's clear. It kind of it works on all these different parts, and understanding that clarity of what you said on not only how you communicate and what things mean to you, but how other people communicate and what things mean to them. It's been a huge eye opener for me over the last few years, and even in the personal relationship, it's understanding. Okay, well, I know that you communicate this way. I know I communicate this way. So how can I get my message across? How can we meet in the middle? How can we take a minute to step back and just think, okay, that's why someone's reacted in this way. So yeah, understanding that clarity on not only ourselves but other people definitely helps. So yeah, all great stuff. And I know you're going to go into it, but communication styles, personality styles, really don't not jumping the gun into a message and going, this is what I mean and this is what it is. Again, we've talked about it so many times before, and the importance of the research and the clarity and even the strategy behind it. Take a step back if you need to and look into these things.
One more point, if
Absolutely.
I may. Sorry, there's
Sure.
one final thing I wanted to say. Delivery, be the way you deliver the message as well. Enthusiasm. I mean, Italians are very good at using their hands, waving their arms around, and being emotional. It can be really, really helpful in delivering a message. And if you're monotone, people are going to switch off as well. But if you change your intonation and you're smiling and you're happy the way, unless it's a really bad message that you're delivering, but the way you deliver a message is so key to make sure that people are engaged and can understand and will ultimately be responsive in the right way.
But body language, that's a huge. I was looking at something only this week. It might have been only towards the end of last week, and it was like when you're speaking, how are you stood? Are you leaning on one side? Even with I do a lot of. I'm quite animated, so I'm always waving my arms about when I'm talking. But even they were saying if you've got your palm up, you're kind of like you're showing undecisiveness. But if you kind of got your palm down, so you're speaking like when you're moving, you're doing hand gestures, you're kind of going down and they're seeing the top of your hand. Again, that's subconsciously people are knowing that you're decisive about what you're saying. So yeah, I think body language is a really interesting point to bring up.
Definitely. I remember doing some presentation training for speaking, and a really common thing people do is what's called chopping wood, because they'll kind of just go like this. So they're moving, but it doesn't actually have any meaning to it. And one of the things that I often do when I'm working through clients' kind of market dominating position and their messaging is to get them, like, so when we get to here's an elevator pitch, here's what you would say when people ask what you do. There's usually a few different formats and things like that, different timings and things. And I actually bring in my acting training to that. So when I was training in Shakespeare, my acting teacher, R.I.P., he actually passed away this year. David Johnson, he was an amazing teacher. He worked with some of the best British actors actually that are around. And but yeah, like we literally, like we started off where we had to physically act out each word, like even the or I or of, like, which is really, really hard. We had to physically act out each word without saying anything. And then we were allowed to bring in some of the speech, but we still had to physically act things out. And then gradually we would act it out physically less until we got to the point where, you looked like a normal person just speaking in Shakespeare's style. And oh my gosh, it was amazing. Like I can tell when I'm watching telly, I can tell who has been trained in Shakespeare, because the way things come through in their acting is just so much more precise, and you really get they understand what they're saying. And I remember the only times I would ever forget my lines was when I didn't really understand what I was saying. And it's not that I didn't understand the I'm just laughing at Chris. I knew I'd seen you somewhere. Yeah, I was on Coronation Street actually. But yeah, I've lost my track now. What was I saying? Yeah,
People that haven't been, you say people that haven't been classic trained in Shakespeare.
Yes, yeah, you can really tell when they have. They just stand out so much more. Oh yeah, I was thinking about forgetting my lines, ironically enough, and then I forgot what I was saying. Only because I was distracted. But it was that thing, if I didn't understand what I meant in the line, it wasn't I didn't understand what the line said, but I had to understand what it meant to me, and then I would be able to remember it. So I think it's really interesting, like if you have an important message, like a presentation or a sales video or something like that, where you actually can plan what you're going to say and rehearse it. And there definitely are times when you don't want to rehearse, and maybe when you just need some bullet points and things and you just go for it. And there are other times when actually you do want to script what you're saying and you want to practice it out and think about the movements that accompany that. It does make a big difference. So certainly from that point of view, in a more formal presentation, you may want to do that. But getting clear on your messages and making sure that they make sense and they make sense for the receiver is really important. And I just spotted another comment from Chris. You're on fire this morning. Oh no, we're on to body language. Sits on hands. Very good, very good. So I want to move on to something else that Jess alluded to, actually, which is about different communication styles and personalities. And definitely different people receive and process information in different ways. So for instance, if I want to have a significant conversation with my husband, I'll give him 3 days warning. And I'll tell him, like, oh, can we talk about X? I can tell maybe kind of Tuesday, Wednesday time, Thursday if I'm pushing it. I say, oh, can we talk about X this weekend? And I'm thinking blah, 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 blah. And then I give him a chance to think about it, maybe do some research. It totally depends on what it is, right? Maybe he wants to do a bit of research. Maybe he wants to think about it. Like, and I don't mean like he's in trouble or we're arguing or anything, but just if we want to discuss something and make a decision. Right? We've been together this October. We'll have been together 14 years. We've only had 3 fallouts in that time. And the reason is because our communication is stellar.
Just scheduling in an argument. By the way, I'm really annoyed at you. So on Saturday at 3:00.
That's what I'm saying. When I say discussion, I don't mean argument, but just we need to make a decision about something, or I want his input on something. So we'll do that. And I also know if something is coming up that is upsetting, then I know to say that. But we might kind of postpone talking about it in more detail, to give him a chance to kind of really get clear on what he thinks, because we operate totally differently. So, I'm a creative extrovert. I think very fast, speak very fast, move very fast, make decisions very quickly. He's not like that. He's an introverted, analytical person. And so he needs time to look at the data and to think about things, to reflect, to come up with what he thinks about something. If I try putting him on the spot, it just doesn't work. There's no point. He'll just have a blank mind. And he's highly intelligent. This has nothing to do with, oh, he's a bit, stupid or whatever. No, not at all. It's just the way his brain operates. So, we need to take this kind of thing into account when we're communicating. And if you're communicating with a broad group of people, you need to allow for the fact that some people are going to take a lot of time to be able to process the information that you're sharing. And if you're a creative type person that thinks quickly, assimilates information, makes decisions quickly, and you expect everybody else to do the same, then you're likely to come a cropper, and you don't want that happening. So you've got to take that into account. Also, you've got different communication styles. Some people are more visual, some are more auditory, some people are more kinesthetic, where it's more about the feeling and movement in their body. So if you're communicating to a group of people, it's a good idea to use all those different styles within your communication. So if you're creating a video, have a transcript underneath it. If you're doing a presentation, maybe it would be helpful to have some visual aids, whether that's you drawing on a flip chart or having slides, or having a handout that people can refer to, whatever way you want to do that. So I think that's really important. I mean, have you ever been in a situation where people were trying to get a message across to you and you're just kind of going,
One of them moments where you think, I've already said what or pardon like 3 times. I can't say it again. So you're kind of like, yeah, like because you've not quite understood it's not quite digesting in your thoughts. And then even, in that same scenario, you might walk away in 10, 20, 30 minutes, 2 days later, you might go, oh, yeah, that's what it meant. That's what you meant now. The penny's just dropped. So, yeah,
right.
it happens, doesn't it? Even in general conversation, never mind leadership communications. Yeah.
Absolutely.
I mean, I've been in meetings where I've kind of switched off because some of it's not been relevant to me, and then my mind's wandered and I'm thinking about other things. And like you said, Jess, there's only so many times you can go, "What? Sorry, pardon." So visual aids are great. Like handouts are always good. At the end. I don't think handouts should be given during the meeting or whatever the communication is. It should always be done afterwards. Otherwise, people will start reading that and not listen to everything else. And I can't multitask. And I found out recently that multitasking is not normal. So
Yeah.
it's yeah, absolutely. I think visual aids are great. Definitely.
Definitely. So I want to talk about something else, which is having difficult conversations. Now we can probably do a whole live on this, actually. But there's situations where we may need to have difficult conversations. Maybe there's a client who isn't playing their part in the relationship. Maybe it's in your personal life. Maybe it's with the team member who's underperforming. Whatever it might be. Maybe it's with a vendor who isn't acting as they should, not getting the results that they're supposed to. And so, like, if we talk about it from the point of view of employees, I think it will help because it'll give some ideas of what you can do around this. So the first thing is creating a culture of ownership and accountability. Now, as I said, I've done all this work on communication, like change programs, employee communication, employee engagement. And certainly for small and medium-sized companies, they don't need engagement programs. What they need is to create a culture of ownership, and that is totally down to the leaders in that business, the leader or leader. And the first step on that is creating what we call vulnerability-based trust. So it needs to be okay for people to make mistakes. It needs to be okay for people to go, I need some help with this. It needs to be okay for people to go, I don't know what you mean. Could you please explain that a different way? After the 5th time they've said, pardon, what? Excuse me. So that they're not walking away going, I don't really know what that was about, but I'm busy. I'll just ignore it. And if it's really important, I'll hear about it again. So creating that vulnerability-based trust means that the leader or leaders need to allow themselves to be vulnerable. And that is really hard for most people to do. But if you do that, it will create a fertile soil that you can plant your seeds of communication in that will grow. and it can have a massive, massive impact on the culture of your business. I think I think a lot of small business owners don't really pay any attention to culture. They maybe don't understand that. They maybe think, oh, that's something big companies do. But actually, when you're, um, just even your first employee, that's the start of you creating that culture, because how you treat that employee, how you communicate with them, what you do and don't tolerate, how you hold them accountable, how you kind of monitor and review their performance, how you reward and praise them, or give them constructive feedback. All of those things create the culture that you've got. And if you don't be human, it doesn't allow other people to be human. And then that's when people make excuses and lie and hide things. And you can't have that vulnerability-based trust. And here's the thing, is that without that vulnerability-based trust, people don't have real discussions. So what tends to happen in those situations in meetings, people either don't speak up, or you might find one or two people dominating the conversation, and you miss out on the input that you actually ought to be having from the people in the room and making better decisions. And also, like, I saw this so much when I was working in those larger organizations. And I wasn't always allowed to do what I felt needed to be done as well, which was really frustrating. And so being able to, when you're communicating with people and you can see they're thinking, oh, well, this isn't relevant for me, or I don't like what I'm hearing, but I don't have any chance to input to it, so I'm just going to go about my business and ignore it. Things like that would happen all the time. Especially where there's cynicism, like maybe people have been asked for input and then never given any feedback, or it was never acted on. That's worse than not asking for input and feedback at all. So this is something to really think about. If you can create that culture, then those difficult conversations become a lot easier. A lot easier. It just makes such a difference. And it's the kind of thing that takes a bit of effort, yet you can reap amazing rewards and amazing return on investment, because your staff's performance is going to be higher, you're going to be less stressed, they're going to be less stressed. It's just, it's a kind of underlying cause of poor performance when you don't have that. Poor communication when you don't have that. And poor communication leads to poor performance. So all of those things are really intertwined.
You know what? You're absolutely right. I think what some business owners or some business leaders forget is that at some point in their working life, they will have been in the shoes of the people on the other side. And once, only when you've been in that position yourself, can you truly understand how that other person feels if you're about to have that difficult conversation, whether it's they don't understand or they're not performing well. And then also, if you create the open door policy where nothing's off the table. You can come in, you can talk about anything. If you don't understand anything, if you're not performing, say, listen, we're a team, because we are a team. Each individual company is a team, because the leader can't do it without the employees under them, and vice versa. So
Mhm.
at the end of the day, we're all in it to be successful. We want the business to thrive and survive and do well. So we should all work together. So having that open door policy and say, listen, you can come and talk about anything. There's no such thing as a stupid question if people don't understand, because I guarantee that somebody somewhere will be thinking that same question, but will be too afraid because they might be deemed a stupid question. And I say I got new starters that start from my freelancers. And one guy said to me, he said, I don't want to keep calling you all the time. I said, listen, you can call me as many times as you like, because if you don't call me, I'm going to assume that you've got it and that you understand. And
Well,
we
now what
all
you can do is you can get them to repeat back to you to
ex-
ensure that
yeah,
understanding.
Yeah, and I thrive on communication. Being able to speak freely. Because if you don't, there's always going to be something niggling in the back of your mind. Well, do they fully understand it? Have I communicated it correctly? Do they know what I'm talking about? But if you, so yeah, open door, say what you feel, say what you mean.
I think on that point as well, like with that, is this a silly question? That vulnerable trust, that putting ourselves out there. This isn't us, or if you're thinking this is what I do or anything like that. This isn't us being a bad person for it, or being different for it, because even being in our childhood, as young as toddlers, we get taught kind of different ways to communicate, which aren't necessarily the most effective ways to communicate. And then it's just natural to us. So even in schools, how often, maybe if you think back to your childhood, if you sat in your classroom, you've not understood something, you've maybe put your hand up, or you've answered the wrong question when you've been asked, oh, Jess, what do you think the answer is? And I don't know, I've said the complete wrong answer. And then maybe the class laughs, or maybe the teacher goes, no, it's this, it's not that. And then you think, oh, I'm not putting my hand up again. I'm not going to open up again. I'm not going to be vulnerable again. So from such a young age, we're evolved and we're adapted to reacting like this and shying away from that vulnerable trust. So then to reintroduce it in adult life, in a work environment, in that culture, it is a challenging thing to do. But once, exactly like you're saying, once it's done, the rewards are just so powerful. And there's plenty of resources to look into this. I listen to Brené Brown a lot around vulnerability and that vulnerable trust. So The Power of Vulnerability is one of her books, is amazing. Atlas of the Heart is one that it's on my list to give a read. So again, all about communication, using language, using words. And I'm also listening to an audiobook at the minute, just a short one. It's called Powerful, I think, and it's about how Netflix created their internal culture through leadership and communication and things like that. So if this conversation is like, hitting home a little bit or inspiring you, there's plenty of books out there. So reach out to one of us for some inspiration. But yeah, keep this conversation going, because it is a really good one.
Absolutely. And I think one of the things that you might not realize as well is that we can put structures in your business to make all of this work better. Like when I worked in PR, the first thing we did when we started working with a new client, we'd research them. Obviously, we'd be talking to them and figuring out what they wanted and what they wanted to be communicating. And we'd figure, we'd look at their competitors. We do all the things that you would do as a business looking to market itself. And we would create a list of core messages. And I would have that up on the wall for each client. I had their core messages. It would be kind of, say 3 to 7 core messages. And every single thing I produced for that client had to have at least one of those messages. And usually you would have, depending on what it was, usually you would have kind of, well, here, for this piece of communication, this is the core message. But like, here's some other extra things that we can include in there as well. So, we need to create those things for our business. Like, what are the structures that will actually allow you to be able to communicate regularly and in a maybe more structured way with your team members? So whether that's your meeting structure, your reviews, just even like, here we go, 90-day plans. What's the plans? What's their accountabilities? Are they clear on them? So there's structures that we can put into your business to make all of this really, really clear and easier to do. Structure sets you free. It's a complete opposite to what I thought when I first set up in business. I was like, kind of, yay, I'm out of the corporate world. I can do what I want when I want and all this. But, I learned over time that actually, having the right amount of structure for the people and the size of business, you want the appropriate amount, what I call the Goldilocks amount of structure, not too much, not too little, for where you're at and where you're going. So, we can each help in different ways with that. So do feel free to reach out to us. We'd love to hear what you think. If you haven't already, pop it in the comments. And we will see you same time next week. So thank you very much, Stephen and Jess, as always. Thank you very much, everyone who's been commenting. If you're catching this on the replay, feel free to pop any questions or comments below. We'd love to hear from you and are happy to reply at a later date. See you next time. Bye for now.
Bye
Bye.
bye.